really excited to have everybody here this month for this conversation. I do think it's a really vital conversation for us to have, and something that we've put a lot of priority in at WrenchWay, and that is growing the relationships between schools and shops across the nation. I think it's really, really important to our industry that we get this right and that we start to get on a better path forward, and just make it for a healthier foundation for our industry. So a couple housekeeping items before we get started. We've muted all microphones except for our panelists. So if you do have a question, we'll go through that. In the chat, introduce yourself and let the other attendees and panelists know where you're listening from. Again, I can see the chat's going crazy right now. It's kind of in the background, so I can't quite see the actual chats themselves, but I'll look at that as soon as we get into this. And then after the roundtable, we do record all of these roundtables. And if you want to watch it again, or you wish to share it with friends in the industry, feel free to send it to them. I think there's always a lot of good content that comes through, and we always appreciate the support. If you want to talk with the other attendees, use the chat function. Sometimes we get that confused between the Q&A, which is also right next to the chat. If you've got a question for the panelists, use that Q&A, and we'll make sure that we get to it as time permits. And really, we'll see in the chat. I encourage everybody, share your best practices, share what works for you, share what doesn't work for you, because we're all here to learn and we're all here to try and get better. So with that, just a real quick plug for WrenchWay. Our mission and why we do these types of events is to promote and improve technician careers and really show that we've got some cool shops, we've got some cool opportunities that are out there that maybe a lot of people don't see or understand. That really, really is effective within schools, right? Being able to showcase who we are within the schools and show that we have some opportunities for these folks. But then also, just for maybe that veteran technician that's out there and they're looking for a different role or a different job because maybe they don't like the shop that they're at, right? You want to be able to create that familiarity with them, show off who you are, and our solutions all kind of cover that. So just a real quick plug for that. And I will stop sharing my screen now, and then we can dive into the panel. I'm going to start by reading the description of the panel so everybody kind of knows why we're here. And that is, the vast majority of shops and dealerships know how important it is to work with local schools, both high school and post-secondary, to help attract students and educate them about the industry. However, calling up instructors on graduation day and asking for their best tech is not the best way to go about it. In this roundtable, we're going to talk about the value of working with schools, how to find the time, and really talk about prioritizing schools, who to get involved with. I think we have two panelists from schools here that'll help us out with that, and what things shops can actually do to help schools. So with that, we're going to do some introductions. So I'll get out of the way here. We're going to talk, to our panelists and learn a little bit about them, and then we'll dive into the actual topic at hand. So Tara, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Not at all. Excuse me. My name is Tara Topel from Topel's Service Center in Lake Mills, Wisconsin. We have been in business since 1948. I haven't been here that long, but my father-in-law did start it back then, and we have recently been able to build a brand new facility in the same location that's 14,000 square feet, and just ready to position ourselves for the future.
Yeah, Tara runs a really, really great shop, not far from where we're at here at WrenchWay in Wisconsin. So pleasure to have her. And one of the things I always love about these roundtables is the diversity and background that we get. And so we've got an independent shop, but then we also have a representative from the dealer side. And Lindsey, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, I love the dynamic here.
Thanks for having me. My name is Lindsey Trett. I work for the Walser Automotive Group in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We were founded here in 1954, family-owned business. We have over 20 retail locations in the Minneapolis area, and 18 of those are dealerships. And we do have affiliate businesses as well. I oversee talent acquisition for the group, and specifically focused on technician recruiting and partnerships with the schools and local communities. So I'm happy to be here.
Similar to Tara, first class operation, first class people, and pleasure to have you on here as well. Cool dynamic about this particular roundtable is that we're mixing industry with education and trying to get everybody kind of in the same room to talk about this. So both Brad and Randy are coming to us from the school side. And Brad, I'll let you kind of go next.
All right. I am Brad Walker. I'm the Automotive Technology Director for Oklahoma City Community College. I'm actually also a graduate from Oklahoma City Community College. I graduated from our automotive program. We won't talk about how many years ago that was, but it was more than a few. We run programs here with, we run the General Motors ASEP program. We run Honda Pack. We run the Nissan NTTA program and a Subaru program. And then we also have a generic all makes all model program for some for students who want to work at independent shops or even a dealership that wasn't one of those ones that I listed.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here, Brad. I think we get that tech school viewpoint from Brad, and then Randy, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, let's hear from the high school side.
My name is Randy Golding. I'm an automotive instructor at West-MEC, which is a career technical education high school in the western part of Phoenix, Arizona, enjoying the great winter here. Our high school is fed by about 47 different regular high schools. We're strictly career technical education. Our programs are 2 years long for most of them. We have partnerships with Ford, Toyota, Subaru, Chrysler, GM, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW, where we can offer online training for our students at no additional cost.
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure of visiting Randy at his campus in Phoenix, and just an amazing campus. What they've built down there is super impressive. I think more of what we need for the industry to continue to grow, and that technical type of high school, I think, is a really, really good way of going about it. So I want to start off with kind of getting a feel for where we're at in the industry. And something that we said in the description is something that I say a lot in a lot of the content that we do, which is I talk to instructors who get really annoyed with shops that show up at graduation time without supporting the program throughout, a student's time there. And so let's start trying to gauge where we stand. And Randy, I'm going to start with you, and give me an idea of what you're seeing out of your advisory committee, what you're seeing from the industry in terms of support or lack thereof in some cases. But just give me an idea. What type of industry support are you getting?
Okay, as far as industry support, the three main manufacturers that we're getting support from is Ford, Toyota, and Subaru. They've been great. As far as the independent side, big brand tires is coming on, but as far as a lot of the local shops, not so much. Now there's a huge disconnect. What I see really is between not only from the manufacturers, but from the manufacturers to the dealerships to the schools. There's a lot of dealerships that just do not have time to function in our advisory, to function even in a job shadow situation where all they have to do is allow a student to show up. Now, I can tell you that, last week we sent out, myself and my partner in crime, and between the two of us, we have 4 automotive classes, 84 students to 30 dealerships. And the dealerships that have sent service managers or shop foremen to our advisory or come and guest speak seem to attract those students. And just case in point, out of those 84 students, 50 of them went to 5 different Ford dealerships and 6 different Toyota dealerships, Toyota, Lexus, Ford, Lincoln. And so there's 2/3 of them that just went to that. And being that this is the first week of February, I can almost etch it in concrete that I know where a majority of our seniors are going after high school now. And so much like you say, you coming in April, game's gone, game's over. If you didn't help us out and be part of anything that we've done by the time December rolls around, you've missed the boat.
I think that's a lot of what we're hearing, and really maybe the disconnect between schools and industry is. And I want to go to you next, Brad, and to talk about this. Where are you seeing something similar to what Randy's seeing there? Maybe it's the few really strong supporters that really are there for your program, while kind of others are sitting in the weeds, or do you get good general support from industry?
We get good general support from industry. I think it's because of the fact that we have our ASEP program and our Honda Pack program. So, all the GM dealers in the Oklahoma City area come to us at the beginning. Actually, the really good ones don't wait for the beginning of the school year, being August. They will start calling right about now, saying, send me your next round of students. And those are the ones that, I go do my shop visits, and when I go out there, it's like an alumni association meeting because there's so many of our graduates in their shops. So, the GM side of it, we get great support, not just from the dealers, but from the manufacturer themselves. They donate all the cars to us. Same way with the Honda dealers around here. They all come to us for their techs. Where we have a disconnect is in the aftermarket side. We have a great working relationship with Bridgestone Firestone, but the independent shops, the mom and pop shops, there's a more of a disconnect there. We do have a few of them that will take students, and ours is a little different. Most of our students work full-time while coming to school full-time, so they're working while they're in school. So we do have a few of our independents that will take on a student, at the beginning and work with them the entire 2 years. And then obviously they keep them employed after that. And those work great. But then we also have a good majority of the April phone calls saying, hey, I know you guys are about to have graduation. Send me your best and brightest. And like Randy said, the best and the brightest has already been working for 2 years and is about to graduate and really likes where they are because they have supported them through the entire 2-year journey.
Now, Tara, I'm going to go to you to talk to Brad's point there. I think on the independent side, that's one of the things that you and I have talked about. I think I've talked about it with a number of independent shops, but really trying to grow that independent presence in a school program. You're one of the best at that, right? You're involved. You're there, and I see you when we're going to advisory committee meetings and that kind of thing. Whereas I do think that there's a level of disconnect there, right? To Brad's point, in trying to get the independent side to really fully embrace being involved with schools. What is it about you that's driven you to be so involved, and why do you think that's so impactful to your business?
I think for me personally, it's because, being a female in the industry and wanting to represent underrepresented communities, I think there's a huge gap there, if just for the industry as a whole. And I guess I will be honest, at first I went in, wanting technicians, and the more that I was there, the more I realized there was a place for me to help, more to give back than what I was going to get. It's a very uneven playing field. So I've been to career fairs at the technical schools, and I'm next to large dealerships, and it's not just car dealerships, it's Crown Lift, and there's other large companies that have huge pocketbooks that I just couldn't even come anywhere close to competing as far as that recruiting end. And us independents do need a lot of help, both from the suppliers and from the manufacturers. I think it will make a really big difference, but it's a huge gap that we're experiencing. So I'll keep going as long as I can and as long as it works out. And especially because I do have a lot of the automotive teachers say, hey, I have a girl in class and I'm just not really sure how I should approach that. Or I'm trying to get more females to come in and they sign up and they're there for a couple of days and then they don't come back anymore. What are we doing wrong? Can I have them reach out to you? So I've been a mentor for several of those high school, females, and just trying to do what I can at that level personally, but I'm really here to represent and talk on the independent side. So. Yeah.
And I think you hit it on the head right there, though, is when you're going into it, your mindset might have changed over the years to where you were going in looking for a technician immediately. But as we start to really get a feel for this, it's not just about one shop or one dealership group. It is about supporting these schools so that we can grow enough to where we all have good technicians, right? And we all have an adequate supply. And I think, coming from my background was on the independent side, growing up in an independent shop. And I think there is some level of going into some of those conversations almost feeling defeated before you get in. But if you change your mindset and you change the way you look at it to how can I help support this program? How can I help grow it for the greater good of the industry? I think that's when you get in the right mindset, and good things will happen as a result of that. But it takes you fully embracing that and buying in. Now, on the other side of that, Lindsey, you and I have had many great conversations about this. And I will say you in general are one of the most supportive people of schools, but it really just, again, not even selfishly to Walser, but just in general, you have a really, really great passion for supporting these schools. How do you see it from the dealer side when you're going into these schools? Obviously, you're trying to create a pipeline of talent for the future, but what's your take on why we should be supporting these schools at a greater level?
I was out of school this morning, so it was a really good way to start the day and actually prepare my mind a bit for this conversation. And it was really the giving back of time. And Randy's message to us last week when we were preparing was showing up. And today's visit was giving our knowledge and our time to share what the workforce is like being a professional, mature adult, and how you can apply those skills, and what education support can do for the student and how it can take you to the next level. And that was all careers. But when we went to the automotive side, it was focusing on bettering the industry as a whole and breaking down those stereotypes so that women and people of color and those of different communities, different backgrounds, which is a big platform for us, career, family diversity, can enter in and feel not only can they be a customer, but could they be an employee? And that starts very early on. It's from middle schools and up. And then today we were actually meeting with students that were on the spectrum, and how could they be involved and be represented and be supported from us too? It can go so many ways. And just being a big believer in early talent, it is up to us to grow these students from the schools from within, and they have to trust us. Me coming in from a big dealer group, they feel a little bit almost a little scared or a little bit overwhelmed. So we break it down. We really relate. I tell my story. I'm from a small town in South Dakota. I'm here because I believe in education. And I believe in furthering someone's career after that, well and beyond. And to share that there's strong intentionality, but you have to stand for something. We stand for something very strong as a company, and honing in on that with the professors and the career faculty, they know that from us, but it takes time. Like Randy and Brad both said, that is years of relationship building. And you might not see students or talent for a few years, like the constant stream of talent, which I know Tara has seen that too.
Yeah, and Tara, I'll go right back to you with that, because I think that's something for those independents that are listening out there that we can learn collectively from as well, is the importance of having a vision. And, I think having that vision of where you want your shop to go really helps drive you to want to help the schools out, right? And I have this conversation not only with independents, but dealers and really anybody that's struggling with this all the time, where it is talking about getting out of the mindset of making this so transactional and truly making it a pipeline of great people. And Lindsey, I'll refer to your podcast before I go back to Tara here, is that you had talked about becoming a company that develops people and really focusing it around people that, if you get to the point where it's, we're a business that develops people that happen to work on cars, or trucks or equipment, whatever it is. Like if you can get yourself into that mindset, I think that's so impactful. And Tara, where I was going with that was, when you think about the vision of your shop and how you're going to develop your future talent, how is it hard to stay patient with knowing that you're not going to get that immediate ROI?
Yes and no. I'll say that going to the advisory council meetings, and actually it's funny that Lindsey had that experience this morning, because we just had one last night at a local high school with 3 different high schools that teach. And so on one side, it's beneficial and you plant seeds, right? And those seeds can flourish and grow. And so that's the hope. I think we all left learning more. We learned from them, they learned from us, and now we can all be better because of it. For me personally, it does get a little frustrating because, to be honest with you, in my town, there is no automotive program. So if you are a high schooler in Lake Mills, Wisconsin, and you want to go into the automotive industry, you now have to commit yourself to going outside of town, about a 15-minute drive, every Wednesday night to be able to go to the automotive class. And unfortunately, that class is not being very well attended. I have a lot of students coming to me and saying, how do I do this? How do I get into the industry? And there's, again, just a huge gap there for me to be able to help them. So I do what I can, but it's so frustrating because this is the reality. And then we wonder, where are all of our technicians? Where is everybody? So
it's so true.
It does get frustrating.
Like as we get more involved with working with schools, that's one of the things that we see, and it might not be as related to our two educational representation here, or representatives, if I can say that. But there are a high number of schools at the high school level specifically that don't have automotive programs, don't have diesel programs, don't have the resources to be able to do this kind of stuff. And as we've dug into that, that's something we've learned that there's a huge opportunity with. There's a lot of kids in these programs that want exposure to what it is that we're doing. And we need to come up with different types of pipelines to reach those people, because if they're just not getting exposure to it because they don't have a program at their high school. I was one of those people, Tara. I grew up in a small town. We did not have an automotive program in my high school. So I was driving 45 minutes every Wednesday to go to the apprenticeship class, and then working in the shop, the other 4 days in the afternoon. So I appreciate that. I think there's so much opportunity there for us to kind of step outside of our comfort zones and those established programs to help these under-established programs be able to at least let us in to speak to their class or do a shop tour, get somebody in for an apprenticeship. Those types of opportunities are out there. We just have to be open to them. And so I appreciate you saying that, because that is something we've learned a lot about here in the last couple of months. Now, Randy, this was brought up by Lindsey earlier, and this was one thing that stuck with me from our intro call. You said it loud and clear in our intro call, and I thought it was such a good thing to talk about, which is one of the most important pieces for a shop, as it relates to the relationship with a school, is simply showing up. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you mean with that?
Sure. We get a lot of, again, coming back to the April issue, where people coming in and wanting people. If you don't invest the time at the beginning, you're not going to see it. And what we talk about with time is, and Tara brought this up, was the advisory meetings. What are we doing? How are we doing it? How can we work with each other? That's an hour, maybe an hour and a half of your time. Willing to come in and guest speak or even help co-teach a class. We've done this with some of the Ford dealerships where we've had multi-point inspection days where they bring in some cars and they'd show the students how to do a multi-point inspection. Big brand tires, say that 3 times fast, would come in, and they've done that where they've just did a class on tires and what to look for on a tire. Again, we're asking for an hour or 2 of your time. And so you come in, you talk a little bit about your business, you do a little class, you end it with a little bit about your business. The students will pick up, they will ask the questions. This is just showing up. We've done a parent night where I invited first year parents, and we invited school counselors to come in and talk with industry and what are the benefits that the industry has to offer these young people. We had 100 parents show up. It was awesome. I can tell you that getting school counselors to show up didn't happen. Everyone's too busy, and they think, okay, working on cars, they're thinking back in the 70s, where they have Crazy Cooter from Dukes of Hazzard fixing cars and overalls, and he's greasy and grimy, and there's no money in it. You're uneducated, and that day has been gone for 20 plus years. We have a very high-tech industry, And we are doing so much of a disservice with our students by thinking with 1970 logic that this is for the uneducated males. This is for everybody. And the people that come in have to be educated. I mean, our high school textbook is written at a 12th grade reading level. And just coming in and seeing what we do. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. The cost of living is different, and all across the country, we know that. But there is not a dealership in my area, district boundaries, that does not have any techs that make, or excuse me, that don't have at least 4 or 5 techs that make over 100,000 a year, if not 150 to 200.
It's funny that you say that, Randy. We just had this conversation with a client of ours this morning where we talked about the frustration in, I almost think this goes twofold, right? Like, it can be really easy to overpromise what we can offer a student when they come out into the industry, with some of the salary ranges, but we can also really underpromise. And one of the issues that I think we have is, if you're a parent and you're sending your kid into this industry, and you see that, the average salary per the Bureau of Labor Statistics is like 45 grand or something like that. I know it's not that, it's somewhere in that range. But you look at that and then you see what the real salaries are, and you see what good technicians are commanding now. That's not a really accurate representation of where we stand. And if you're judging a kid's future off of that number, that can be very misleading. Now, the other side of that is when we get desperate maybe to get students into our classrooms and maybe say, oh, you're going to come out and make 100 grand a year right off the bat. That's also not realistic, right? So trying to make sure that we're not misleading, that we're really accurate. I think that's where industry can help out a lot, right? Because we are the ones paying those salaries, and we can have a really accurate depiction or paint a really clear picture of what that is going to be. And Brad, I want to go back to you with that and see if you have anything to add on to what Randy was saying there, because I do think the showing up and really showing how professional this industry is now is such a big piece, because we've got to change the perception at some level.
Yeah, kind of building on what Randy said, actually showing up and being present, not just at advisory meetings, but like when I go recruit at the high school career tech centers and stuff like that, to have a service manager or service managers come with me and just kind of discuss the career, the earning potential and stuff like that. And then another thing that Randy had mentioned was at the parents' night thing, that the lack of school counselors, that's an issue. It really is at the high school level, because they still view that as, they still view what we do as just menial grunt work and not real high income level. So one of the things that we've done here is we've started trying to reach the potential students before they even get to high school. We run a Boy Scout badge camp and a Girl Scout badge camp. And we have our industry professionals. One young lady that owns a shop, she comes in all the time and provides pizza and everything, but just lets them know that, hey, and really she may never ever, and I may never ever see one of these young men or women as a student, but it gets them exposed to it, and it makes them realize that there is something more than just a 4-year degree or a 4-year institution. And unfortunately, we're here. I have people that work here that come down my hallway and say, well, what do you guys do this here? We got tools and everything, we've been here for 30 years. So, it's just the exposure and the, getting not just the school, but the industry out there.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsey, you look like you're agreeing to what they're saying there.
Yeah.
Fill us in a little bit.
I want to go back to one thing Randy said that we're experiencing in the industry is we're setting wrong expectations for these students. I don't know where they're getting it from. Someone in the chat mentioned it too. And then we get so desperate for technicians. And I'm not saying us as a dealer group, I've seen it in the industry that we're overclassifying them, and then they're being overpaid and they aren't able to do the work that they're being paid to do, which is a way backwards way of thinking. And then your tenured techs who have worked their way up to semi-skilled or light duty or journey person can do the work. They've earned their classification level, but because we became so desperate in our recruiting, not practically, we're giving them a classification they have not yet achieved or deserved based on their training and accreditations. Huge problem.
What I have told my students, and this is after job shadow, is that most of them are going to come in and they're going to be either lot porters or lube techs, and probably making $15 to $18 an hour. I said, where you get to the 100, 150 is, it's up to you. You have to take the time to learn and practice your trade.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't fill them up with sunshine saying you're going to make all this money when you leave West-MEC. I know, and Brad can probably say the same thing, even though he's at a community college, that the sheer amount of knowledge that you're going to need to be successful in this industry is not coming from me. Okay, I'm going to give you this much. And that's just the reality of everything there is to know about fixing cars. Brad's going to add to it, but not much, to be honest, even with Ford and GM and all of that. And so telling them this is what it is. Now, the idea of becoming a porter or a lube tech isn't so much to just get you into the door. It's also for the employer to see, are you going to show up?
Yeah.
Can you do the 3 things that I'm asking you to do? Show up on time, stay off your phone, and give me an honest day of work. And if you're able to do that, and now I have somebody that I can invest in, I'm going to start doing that. And that becomes the win-win, whether we're talking a dealer or an independent. Am I going to invest in it? Because I've had dealers that where we've had a student go through a manufacturer program and they tie them to the detail shop.
Mm.
It's like, really, is this young person able to do more? Yes. Then why is he washing cars? Well, that's how I started. Is he able to do more? And you said yes. Just because you started that way and that's your mindset, you're killing the industry, not just this young person, but the whole industry. Because this young person is going to leave, and now we all lose.
That is, you nailed that 100% right there, Randy. Like that, when that person leaves, they're not just leaving to go from our shop to another shop. They're leaving the industry altogether. And that is an absolute killer for both the school. You know, I know I've talked with tech schools, and I'm curious, Brad, if you run into this, but you know, the placement rates and the retention in the industry is a critical factor for a school. And not only that, like the more you build your alumni network out in the workforce, the more support you've got as a school, because they know who you are and they know the program and probably respect the program in a lot of ways. But if we bring them in and set them up for failure right off the bat, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And it feels like we've done that for a really long time. I know from when I was a kid, it was very similar to where we're at right now. How important are those first few years in a shop, Brad?
They're very important for our students. We don't lose a whole lot of our students because, you know, I'm brutally honest with them. You know, they ask how much money they're going to make. And I tell them, well, when you're a student, you're starting at the bottom, you know, plain and simple. And once you graduate, you're going to make anywhere from $1 to $100,000 a year. Depends on how hard you work and how motivated you are. But the where we find with the students that do end up leaving, not just to go to a different shop, but as you said, just leaving the industry entirely and going down the hallway here and taking engineering classes or philosophy classes or whatever. A lot of times it's because they got burned out at their shop, because in their eyes, they weren't getting to do work that was building their skills. You know, they were tied to the lube rack or tied to the detail rack or something like that. We do have one or a few of our service managers that have a where they lay out what's expected of the student. And once you reach that level of online training or hands-on training or whatever, you bump up to this amount of pay and you'll move over to this line technician that you're working with or something like that. That way, when it works out really well for that shop or those shops that do that, because when the student comes to them and says, hey, I've been on the lube rack for 6 months, then the service manager can pull out his sheet of paper and say, well, you haven't done this, and you haven't done this, and you haven't done this. Or they may look at it and say, well, you've done that, that, and that. Yeah, that's my bad. I should have put you with, Julie over, in light repair or something like that. So things like that go a long way with a student to keep them from getting burnt out, kind of a career path is what they're seeing. Not just a career path, but also a pay scale increase once they obtain those skills.
I've got a question. I'm going to start with the education side here, and then we'll go to the industry side. I'm hearing more and more often entry-level salaries are so important, and the reason for that is our competition is McDonald's and Amazon and these big companies that also can't find workers. I know I drove through McDonald's to get my son a Happy Meal a couple of weeks ago and saw a sign that they're paying for their workers' college, right? Like there's so much competition for young, skilled talent. How do we compete with that? Because I think, to Lindsey's point, you don't want to bring them in at a level of pay that their expectations are that they're turning hours right away. Because I think when we do that, you set the shop up for failure, you set the student up for failure. So how do we find that happy medium? And Brad, I'm going to go right back to you again here, but how do we find that happy medium of where to slot in an entry level technician? How do we get them in, pay them so that we're competitive with a McDonald's, but then also not require that we get so much out of them right off the bat?
Can I add something in super quick?
Oh yeah, Tara, go right ahead. Yes.
And keep in mind that if you go to McDonald's, you don't have to buy your own tools. You don't have to buy work boots. So keep that in mind when you're answering, please.
100%. That's a great point.
Well, we do fight that with the starting wage, because we have a lot of Amazon fulfillment sites just right across the highway from us, and they pay really well. And so we do fight that. And then to compound that, a lot of shops will say, okay, we're going to match that $20 an hour, but they put them on flag hour from day one. And that's just a killer, because they're thinking, oh, I'm making $20 an hour. And then they get in there and they only flag 1 or 2 hours a day, and that just burns them out and they go down the hole, like I said. So we run into that issue a lot. But the really good dealerships and the really good shops are the ones that start them at a decent living wage and show them that, yeah, you can go to McDonald's and make 18 an hour. And like Cara said, you don't have to buy your own tools, but 10 years from now, you're still going to be flipping burgers. You may be assistant manager, whatever. Whereas this is a career, and so if you lay out, like I said, the career path for them and show them these are the things, if you do these tasks, this is how you will be rewarded. That will help a lot, not just with retention, but recruiting and things like that. So, and then word of mouth, you were talking about having a bunch of graduates at a shop, word of mouth goes a long way for us also. And, a lot of times they'll tell them you need to tell their friends you need to go to OCCC for automotive, or they even recruit for their own shop within our classes. Now, we try not to let that happen. However, when the students go to lunch, I don't go to lunch with them. So, just word of mouth helps a lot too.
Tara, do you battle that? The kind of internal fight of, yes, we know we need to pay them a competitive salary, but we also have to be profitable as a company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, every state has different laws too. So like for us, we have to pay a fair hourly wage, and we can't only do flat rate. As an independent, you have to be over 50% sales in order to do just flat rate. So just, realizing some of those, some of those issues. But yeah, I mean, I think you have to see it as an investment. And I think you just have to, everybody should be getting a certain amount of training a year anyway in order to stay in this industry. So in a way, you're, helping their education to learn and grow, you're investing in them, and then they should invest back in you and your company. So.
How important is it to have that be formalized, or is it more of, bring them in, let them shadow somebody, or is it, trying to put together a formalized program once they're in?
Yeah, I think it's very, very crucial. I'll be honest with you. I went running headfirst when we first got into the business and into the high schools and said, I want to help. And I brought in some people, and I ended up seeing the teacher like a couple months later, and he was like, so what's happening over there? And I said, what do you mean? Like, isn't this great? He said, well, you've got one technician over there that hates his life and just can't wait to get out of the industry. And he talked them out of leaving it. So now they want to go into welding. So that was a really big lesson for me. I think a lot of us think that just because they're great technicians that they can be a mentor, and a lot of them don't have the ability to teach and help people grow. So we all need to be careful, whether it's a dealership or an independent, that whoever we're putting those students with or those interns with, we have to make sure that the people that are leading them are leaders and true leaders, and not just really great at what they're doing.
Boy, is that a good point. Lindsey, you and I had talked about this on the podcast we did. Can you share a little bit about your journey and trying to get some structure around young people as they come into the dealership?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many points there. I agree with Tara. The identifying of a leader based off actually being a person who can serve others, be a leadership of example, and appropriately teaching somebody is different than someone who can turn time and be very, very efficient. You don't want the guy who turns 80 hours a week always be the guy who teaches the new person coming in what they're doing, because there are a lot of bad habits there. Not saying they don't produce, but there is a level of identifying someone who does it right the first time, who has accuracy, who believes in training, who believes in taking it slow and doing it accurate. And we actually have an emerging leader program for technicians every year that we do a 9-box exercise with them, identifying performance, individual contribution, and then their potential. And then those are specifically identified trainers or team captains in the shop that are then dedicated to the students coming in. And from that point, they are trained to teach. So the flat rate goes out of the way, and the student coming in is also put on a guaranteed wage for at least 6 months, so they can truly just take in the training that's coming at them. New system, new brand, new job, new everything. And then they're assessed every 30, 60, 90 days. Speaking to what Brad said, did you do this, this, and this? Do we need to extend your guarantee, or are you right where you should be at this moment to now go on to the flat rate system? But the importance of the leader attached to the student, and that should be a marriage early on. So we actually bring in the team lead or the dedicated captain of the store to the schools or the fairs, or when we do host trips for relocating students, we bring them to those events or even a breakfast or a dinner and have them meet the parents. That's next level.
It is. And that parent relationship is vital. We've got to get to them and make sure that they know that this is a different industry than maybe their grandparents or their parents grew up in, and it's far different. I mean, it's just different altogether. But Randy, I want to go to you on the relationship there, right? How important is it for the school to be closely tied to the shops so that we understand where that student is at in their progression, right? Or maybe even giving feedback back and forth, just that open communication between the two. Obviously it's important, but give me an idea of what kind of communication is important.
Trying to put this, to me, communication is just huge. Being able to talk with the service managers and being able to talk openly and not as business, but more so as friends. So the honesty shows, knowing that we have like 6 main dealerships that work well with us. They all have plans like what was said by Brad and Lindsey of where the student should be. And this is brought into the conversation with the students and even with the parents, if the parents are willing to sit down and listen.
Yeah.
Okay. There's other avenues that need to be explored too, is because some of these kids have parents that aren't parents. They're just there.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother conversation. And I really don't want to get into that one. But being able to to honestly just to come, being able to call me up or email me and saying, hey, look, this is what's going on. Is there something you can do or we can talk about to help a student? And not just being passed off from one to the other. It has to be a partnership with that and being able to have the hard talks.
I think
And so
that
I think I'm answering your question. If not, if
you
I'm
are.
not, please.
No, I think you're spot on, Randy. Brad, I don't know if you want to talk any more to the relationship and the communication between shops and schools. Like, where can we improve? What can we get better at?
Well, just kind of going back to what Randy had said today and last Friday when we spoke just as a small group, just being present, and helping us with recruiting and not just saying, hey, if you need something, let me know, but actually, some of our shops actually, and this is a good problem, they actually will just, service managers will just show up here and say, hey, do you need something? And whatever the case may be. But another thing that shops can really help the schools with, I'm blessed with having the corporate programs here, so I don't have to worry about cars. They donate them to us, but we lack in components. So getting components like transmissions, engines, stuff like that. And it may be junk to you as an independent shop or a dealership or whatever, but it may be something we desperately need, and we will get into it and tear apart and see if it's something we need. So, just little things like that. And then, as far as, like I said, trying to help recruit, going with us when we recruit high school students, talking to guidance counselors and stuff like that. That's where we need our biggest help. And then for myself personally, independent shops, because there's so many of them. I don't have time to reach out to all of them, but the problem is they don't know, half of them don't know I'm here. When there's people on my campus that don't even know what I do, how can I expect somebody 5 miles away to know that I'm here to help? So
it's interesting to me because I always use the analogy that the school shop relationship reminds me of a service manager, sales manager relationship in a dealership where, typically when the service manager is doing their job and they see the sales manager walking around the corner, like, oh, what's he want now? Like it's,
Yeah.
And I think there's so many avenues or so many different examples of that in our industry where the school's like, all they do is ask for stuff. They're never there. Like, I think that's the part we've got to get better. Lindsey, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a reciprocated relationship. And how much you
The
invest
good
in
ones.
each other. Yeah, the good ones should be reciprocated with time, energy, and it may be an exchange, but it's just funny. But
Yeah. Tara, go ahead.
I would agree. And I think even just last night being at the meeting locally, and it's pretty obvious what we all want, right? And what we need. We need well-trained, competent technicians, period. But what we don't know is what they want and need. And I think every school has to be different. Like, it's great to have the corporate support and to be able to have that. Last night, I finally just said, like, what do you need? Like, what do you need here? Well, we need cars. We need cars that weren't taken apart 50 times and put back together again. We need cars that have brakes, that will run to be able to pull them into the shop. And I might not have those cars here, but I have customers not fixing their cars, looking for a way to donate them. So that opened up an avenue, on our side. And it just really made me think about what WrenchWay has done, on their website with the schools by saying, hey, schools, what do you need? So I think if there's one thing of anybody that's maybe like listening or isn't really sure, like, where do we start or what should we do? I think that the perfect thing to do is just to start there, and you can go and you can see schools in your area, and then you can see the things that they need. Maybe they just need people to show up to their advisory meetings. That's all, just some time. Maybe they need some cars, some components. Maybe you have a core that's new and you don't have to return it, instead of taking that to the scrapyard, take it to the school, let that be part of their training and education. So I just think that's, I've got a lot of different tangents that I could go on here, but the main one is just you have to ask, don't just assume that because Brad needs components that you can take your components to the local school. And then you need to ask and you need to listen to what it is that they're looking for.
Well, that warms my heart that you brought up WrenchWay. I certainly didn't want it to be a sales plug, but I do really appreciate that. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do there, right? Is just to try and streamline that relationship a little bit. I'm curious, and I want both Tara and Lindsey to give advice to the schools here on how to ask for things, right? Because I think in a lot of cases, schools aren't overly comfortable asking for things. And so, or maybe not even understanding what they want to ask for. And as we've gotten more involved with schools, that's one of the things we've really tried to train schools on is break it down into bite-sized pieces. Don't just say, come blindly support our program, but here are some specific things that we can do or that you can do for us that would help us out a lot as a program. I'm curious, and Tara, I'll start right back with you again. Do you have advice for schools on ways to communicate with shops, on ways that maybe they can get a little bit better at asking for things?
I mean, I think everything always comes down to a relationship, right?
Yeah.
And that takes time and investing into that relationship. But I do think that, there's got to be lists. I know there's certain bigger, part suppliers that you could just tap into their service centers, or, Napa has them, Auto Value, Bumper to Bumper has them. I'm sure everybody, AutoZone. I mean, I think all of those suppliers have their certified service centers, and then you're tapping into your usually ethical higher end professional shops. And not saying that other ones are not. So I will just say that and not offending anybody here. But it's a great way to tap into a large amount and then say, hey, here's what we need, or, just like include them as well. And that's a big part of what I was hoping to achieve even today is getting those suppliers and those manufacturers. So maybe getting to those shops through those organizations. And I don't think you'll have to work quite so hard. And I think it can make it's a huge jump.
I think that's a great point. I know in a lot of the instructors I've talked to, in a lot of cases, they feel like they're trying to cold call shops to ask for stuff. And I think that might be where the apprehension lies, where if it feels, or there's a perception that it's a lot of work to do, they'll just say, I can just do it on my own. I'm not even going to ask for it. Like, I'll just figure it out. That's where I think that I feel like there's a big disconnect is it's like, okay, if we can get really good at asking for things and then we can get really good at giving things, I think we can really mate these two things up really, really well. And Lindsey, I'm curious as to what you've seen in that relationship, or being able to maybe offer some advice to these schools on what they could do to make it easier on both sides.
Gosh, Tara really illustrated it amazingly well. It's really specifically the why behind the need, so I can better facilitate through a manufacturer, through our parts distributor. It's this car for this brand, for this purpose, for this class, and understanding the program of the needs behind it. That helps me a ton versus I need this particular car, or not even in particular. We need cars is usually what they say. We need cars. Okay, tell me more. And I can go deeper and usually facilitate that a little easier.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like it all does come down to relationships and communication. And I think the more we can get schools comfortable asking for things, and the more industry can step up and help these schools out, is big. Now, we do have a few questions. We've got about 5 minutes left, which this is probably the fastest hour of my life. This has gone really, really fast. But Bronson says the red tape at my district to accept donations is too much. I've heard this from other schools as well. And I'm curious as to whether Randy or Brad, if you've got any ideas or input there as to how to get around that red tape, because it is very frustrating for a lot of the schools that I work with, that the hurdles that they have to go through to accept industry support makes it damn near impossible, right? So I'll let either one of the two of you answer that, or give a suggestion too.
Boy, I mean, there are some vehicles that are on loan to our program, so we don't have the title, and they are returned when we don't need them. So there's that we've used. I've also, and just kind of with the manufacturers, some of them, especially with the high school, don't want to leave cars with the high school. And I get that. But again, just kind of moving things on loan, things that are just kind of being borrowed can kind of go through some of the red tape. I do know procurement laws are different from every state, and it gets very, 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 very consuming. And it's hard. But again, borrowing is what I found works the best.
Yeah.
On loan.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say here, and we have the red tape problem also, because we have had an individual try to donate a car, and we thought, well, because all we have is manufacturer donated cars, we're kind of, pigeonholed. We don't have a Toyota or a Chrysler because we don't have one of their programs. So I found that trying to accept a donation from an individual, there was way too much red tape and it was just horrible. But the way the manufacturer does it is, as Randy said, they kind of loan it to you. They still hold the title, and it's a salvage title. It can never be insured or driven on the road or whatever. And unfortunately, with Honda, when we're done with the car, they want them back. And I don't know what they do with them after that. The GM side of it. So for anybody that's a school here, if you are near a GM ASEP college, when we're done with our GM vehicles, we donate them to the high school programs, or we have that ability to. The only stipulation, and this gets people, is you have to be ASC Education Foundation accredited. If you're not, then you can't receive that donation. But it's going back to the whole red tape and how to get around it. If you can find some way to change the title over from it being a driver vehicle, so you're not going to be driving it, you're just going to be using it training only, salvage title or whatever has to be done with that title to allow them to donate it without it actually being an asset, if you want to think about it that way.
Yeah, that's great advice. And Tara had messaged me while you were responding saying that schools need to talk with each other as well, right? We need to get these best practices out. And if you're dealing with the issues of the red tape, I'm guessing there's a bunch of other schools that are also dealing with that. So, we do a monthly roundtable for schools, and this is really kind of taking the place of that this month. But that would be such a great conversation to have, is how do you get around the red tape? How do you, what are some ways to work with your administration to maybe be a little bit more accepting to industry support? And really, that's what we're here for too. We would love to help try to facilitate some of those conversations or push them along, and we will do so any way that we can. So with that being said, we are exactly at 2 p.m. Central Time, and our hour is up. We do have, I know there's a lot of questions that we weren't able to get to. I was kind of going through the chat. The discussion in chat was phenomenal. I'm going to keep that so I can read it afterwards because it was really, really good. But I did want to just say thank you to our panelists for today. You're all very, very busy people, and we do really appreciate everything that you've done. So keep doing what you're doing out in the industry. We'll try to help support you in what you're doing. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
You know,